Well, hello, thank you for joining me today again on the Church History Trail. You're very welcome to the programme. And we're continuing here at the Bon Road Presbyterian Church in Dromore, County Down. And I want to talk to you about the Huguenot connection, because there is indeed a Huguenot connection here with one of the former ministers. And that was the Reverend James RENTOUL. Now, the Reverend James, who had been a minister in Clough in County Antrim, was installed as a minister here of Dromore Presbyterian Church on the Bonbridge Road on the 30th of May 1878. Now, he was born on the 12th of August 1841 of Huguenot stock. Of course, the Huguenots were French Protestants who were persecuted for their faith in France, very much like the Presbyterians were here. And so, just as the Presbyterians fled for a better life and religious freedom in the New World, so the Huguenots fled from the King of France and the Roman Catholic Church in France to various parts of the world. And one of the places that they came to was here in Ireland. And so the Reverend RENTOUL was of Huguenot descent. Now, his grandfather, the Reverend James RENTOUL, same name, of course that's who James was named after, was born in 1762. And of course he was a Huguenot himself. He was the minister of the Presbyterian Cessation Church of REV in County Donegal. And he had been ordained there on the 23rd of June 1791. His grandson then was the Reverend James RENTOUL of Dromore Bonbridge Church here on the Bon Road, who I've just mentioned, of course. And the Reverend James grew up in the Ballymoney Manse. His father was also a minister. The Reverend John Lawrence was the minister of the Ballymoney congregation. So it ran in the family, very much like the Bruce family, who I mentioned in a number of videos. They had a succession of 7 ministers. And so there was various ministers here in this family as well. Now, James was educated at Queen's College, Belfast, and he took his theological training at the Presbyterian Assemblies College, also in Belfast. Now, in 1865, he received a call from the congregation of Clough in County Antrim and was ordained there on the 14th of March 1865. And he ministered there for over 13 years. Now, fairly early in his ministry, he married a Miss Elizabeth Steele Robinson. And it was a happy marriage which produced 2 sons. But this happy home was plunged into deep sorrow with the death of Mrs. RENTOUL in 1877. Now, another event was also to affect his life, and that was the death of the minister just before him here, which was the Reverend John McKee. He was the minister here of Bonbridge Road Presbyterian, and I done a wee video of him, so you can check that one out. Now, in the spring of 1878, James preached as a candidate for 2nd Dromore, and he was installed here on the 31st of May 1878. So he married again. His second wife was a Miss Turner of Belfast. And the Reverend James RENTOUL was, of course, a kind man. The faith that he preached on Sundays was followed by his example during the week. And he was a staunch opponent of the drink trade. And yet, if he thought that an elderly person would benefit from a spoonful of whiskey at night, he wouldn't hesitate in buying a bottle and carrying it openly to the person's home. So very much like Paul said to young Timothy, drink no longer water, but use a little wine for your stomach's sake and your often infirmities. Now, in the year 1908, the name of the congregation changed from 2nd Dromore to Bonbridge Road. Now, to mark the coronation of King George V on Thursday, 2nd of July 1911, the children gathered at the church here to receive from the minister a small souvenir gift. And the Reverend RENTOUL conducted a special service here in connection with the Ulster Covenant in 1912. The Orange Men paraded, and in his address, the Reverend James spoke of the statesmanlike qualities of Mr. Gladstone. Of course, he was the ex-Prime Minister of Britain, who had introduced 2 previous Home Rule for Ireland bills, which had been defeated. And so a third bill, introduced by the new Prime Minister Gladstone, Herbert Asquith, actually passed in 1912. Though with the outbreak of World War I in 1914, it was never implemented. So the Reverend James, like many of the ministers of his day, was a strong Gladstone liberal. And although he did not proclaim it from the housetops, of course, he kept that sort of to himself, because Home Rule being an emotive topic, of course, amongst unionists back in those days, and still very much is today. So you can understand why he wouldn't proclaim that from the housetops. Now, in June 1916, after applying for retirement, the General Assembly of the Presbyterian Church gave him their permission to retire, and he did so at the end of the year. But sadly, just 2 days later, after he retired, he died on Tuesday morning, the 2nd of January 1917. So very sad. He never really got to enjoy his retirement. Now, the funeral took place on Thursday, the 4th of January 1917 at Clock Presbyterian, the place of his early ministry. And he was laid to rest beside his beloved first wife, Elizabeth, who died exactly 40 years earlier. So I'm going to show you a cross here. A replica, I can near say that, Celtic cross. And as you can see, it's Margaret, I'm not sure what the second name is, hard to make out. It's Martin anyway, wife of John E. Martin. And you can see a JP beside that, Justice of the Peace. I think that's Queenie, actually. Margaret Queenie. Margaret, I think. But John E. Martin, Justice of the Peace, DROMORE. And he died September. And it was 1807. So there you go, that was a Justice of the Peace from DROMORE. So, the Reverend RENTOUL left instructions that the grave was not to be reopened again. And the headstone simply says Elizabeth RENTOUL 1877 and James RENTOUL 1917. And there you can see the Presbyterian church here where he ministered. And he's not buried here, of course. He's buried in Clock in County Antrim. Now, I'm going to mention this building here to you, because that's the old primary school here in Dromore. And there's a new primary school out the road a bit. So you can see that's all closed up. And then that is not a castle, that's actually the Church of Ireland, which goes back centuries. But that actual building was built by the Bishop, Jeremy Taylor, in the 17th century. And then this here, building here, just behind that building is the castle, at least what's left of it. And at the other side of it, there's a street which is known as Rampart Street, which of course gets its name from the ramparts of the castle. So I'll try and get through here. So James's second wife then, she actually unveiled a marble plaque which was erected by the congregation here for James in memory of their beloved minister in September 1921. And in 1915, the Reverend James, of course, he had celebrated 50 years of ministry in the both churches. And altogether, he had been in ministry for 52 years when he died in January 1917. So there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. I know I did. So thanks for watching, and God bless.